Wounded Warrior Project is one of the country's two most prominent veterans charities, and I've always been pretty skeptical of them. Now, my skepticism probably started in an unfair way, I'll admit, which is I would see TV ads for Wounded Warrior Project, and the spokespeople were horrible right wingers, like this country singer named Trace Adkins, Jimmy Buffett. And I say that that's a sort of unfair criticism because, number one, it doesn't make you a scam charity that you have right wingers as your spokespeople, number one. And number two, they also had more reasonable celebrity supporters as well. I just happen to not be seeing them. But as it turns out, the manure has now hit the spinning blades, and Wounded Warrior Project has fired two of its top executives after it was revealed that millions of dollars were squandered on these extravagant luxuries and fancy restaurants and parties instead of money for wounded veterans, which is what the Wounded Warrior Project purports to be for. For example, Wounded Warrior Project confirmed that there was an all-hands meeting thrown in an upscale resort in Colorado in 2014 that cost about $1 million, and it reportedly featured an opening sequence where one of the executives rappelled down into a waiting crowd. Also in 2014, they spent $26 million on employee conferences, which were basically like lavish adult spring break parties with booze and lavish resorts, etc. And Eric Millett, who's a retired Army staff sergeant, worked there as a motivational speaker until he quit after 2 years. And he said, "I'll be damned if you're going to take hardworking Americans' money and drink it and waste it instead of helping those brave men and women who gave you the freedom to walk the face of the earth." 40 former employees have now reported that spending was totally out of control, and some of them were so afraid of the organization that they spoke only on the condition of anonymity. One quote about a so-called meeting at a luxurious Colorado Springs resort says it best. He being Nardizzi, one of the two executives in question here, he rappelled down the side of a building. He would come in on a Segway. He's come in on a horse. These are micro incidents. Let's talk about the macro now. In general, these veterans charities spend about 10 to 15% of their money on overhead, which includes administration costs, fronting cash for charity events, which allow you to get more donations, etc. CBS News found that Wounded Warrior Project spends 40 to 50% on overhead, including these extravagant parties. And this still doesn't even explain where the majority of the money went. $26 million is a huge amount, but it doesn't even put a dent in the fact that 40 to 50% of the money that they've raised is being spent on overhead. And this really angers me because our troops are sent to pointless wars. They come back. Republicans vote not to fund their health benefits that they need. They defund healthcare, blah, blah, blah. But it's the liberals who don't support the troops. And then an entire industry is made out of supporting our troops. Donald Trump, right? He claims he's making donations to vets. Those aren't borne out by any of the tax records. And now this from the Wounded Warrior Project. It really angers me, particularly when we know who is benefiting from this faux patriotism of helping vets.
Yeah. And the argument that, well, we're throwing these parties because it helps us bring in more money or because it helps the employees bring in more money, not at 50%. No way. This is despicable. And year after year, we cover stories like this of similar charities. Yeah. This is the first time it's been charities for veterans. We've done cancer organizations and things like that.
Right.
And this type of just despicable behavior is happening all over the place.
Particularly when, as I mentioned, Wounded Warrior Project thought of by many as one of the elite, right, in the top 2 or the top 5 so-called veterans charities, and they are running one of the biggest rackets we've seen. I mean, 50% of the money is going to expenses and overhead and parties and riding in on a horse at an event. It's absolutely despicable. I love reading, but I rarely have time to read all the books on my list, and audible.com audiobooks are an awesome solution. I'll listen at the gym or in the car, and audible.com has over 180,000 different titles. Their app is free, and it works on almost all devices. And unlike streaming or a rental, with Audible, you own your books, so you can access your books anytime and anywhere. Audible.com's great listen guarantee lets you exchange any book you're not happy with for another title, anytime, no questions asked. I've recently been listening to Guns, Germs, and Steel, the great book by Jared Diamond, and I have a whole list of titles in my queue ready to go. For our listeners, audible.com is offering a free 30-day trial membership. Go to audible.com/Pakman today to start your free trial. Show your support for the David Pakman Show and get a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Pakman.